Good morning, Liberty. It is Monday morning, June 24th, 2019. My name is Michael Bolden, broadcasting live from my home office and studio here in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. This show, we are talking about what I consider to be the most important question that you need to ask whenever you think about a program, regulation, rule, law, order, proposal, whatever it may be coming from someone in the federal government, politician, judge, bureaucrat, any of it. And even, of course, the pundits that support various programs. The number one question, and in fact, it's the number one question that's almost always missed. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting follow-up to the episode last week, Friday, that we had as well. Now, before doing that, I do want to say hello to some friends out in the live chat. We do multicast live through our channels over at YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, DLive, and Twitch.tv every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'm very grateful for you spending time with me today. And, of course, we have our archives over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/Good Morning Liberty, where you can find also the archive version of the videos, and at BitChute, plus all of our podcast editions, Spotify, Google, and iTunes. I'm grateful for all the nice reviews we've had coming in over at iTunes as well. Thank you very much for that. So hello to some friends in the chat. Ward Lawrence, good to see you, buddy. Austrian Watchman, Justin Bayola, Timothy Martin, Bob Ferguson, good to see you over on YouTube. Dan Reed and others over on Facebook. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm very grateful. That really is an understatement. You know, there's really, you believe in something, you work on something that you believe in, you love what you do. Sometimes the work is grueling and very difficult. But I love the work that I do. I feel like I've been given a great gift to be able to stand up for the Constitution and liberty at, I think, could be its moment of greatest danger if we look at modern times in general. So the fact that you are willing to at least listen to what I have to say, I think, is really, really awesome. And that makes me think tomorrow, of course, is our 13-year anniversary, June 25th, 2019. And when I started the organization out as a single-person blog, my goal really was just to be able to share some thoughts, to reach just a handful of people when the Bush administration was in power, to point out all the many constitutional abuses, whether it's foreign policy or mass surveillance or the Real ID Act or the drug war, spending, Medicare Part D, all these various problems that were coming out of the Bush administration, and also to encourage people to recognize the fact that you cannot rely on government to limit its own power. It doesn't matter which party was in charge in Washington, D.C., you're always going to have larger and larger government. So we are now teaching and reaching more people than I ever dreamed possible, really. And I'm very grateful for everyone. That's the people who've donated, of course, our members. The finances really, really are huge, whether it's $1 or $2, all that stuff is massive. But everyone who's taken other actions, if you subscribed, whether it's your first day here with us or you've been here with us for 13 years, I don't know how many have been with us all along through multiple administrations in D.C. It doesn't matter whether you've subscribed, you've liked, comment, shared, gotten our newsletter, posted links, forwarded articles, all of that stuff. It's a grassroots effort here, and it is really, really impossible for me, Mike Meharry, TJ Martinell, Dave Benner, all the other bloggers. It's impossible for us to do the job without all of you helping us out, spreading the word. So thank you so much. We've got a long way to go, right? So with that in mind, as a follow-up, I wanted to do a series of episodes on some of our core principles. And on Friday, I did an article. I guess I posted it as an article as well. But our episode was called A Warning from 5 Founders on the Danger of Ignoring the Constitution. And this was, I think it's really an important thing to recognize. From John Dickinson, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, there are many others who told us over a period of actually 3 decades the danger of turning a blind eye to violations of the Constitution or government assuming arbitrary power, what they called arbitrary power, or usurpations of power, or consolidation is another term. The danger of that, no matter whether you like the policy or not. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, I pulled the link up here so you can take a look. It's on YouTube, Facebook, and a few other places. Of course, the archives at 10thamendmentcenter.com/Good Morning Liberty. Samuel Adams put it this way. Here's the quote. "Let us remember that if we suffer tamely a lawless attack upon our liberty, let us remember that if we suffer tamelessly a lawless attack upon our liberty, we encourage it and involve others in our doom." So if you turn a blind eye to new powers from the government, whether you think it's a small violation of your rights, a small violation of liberty, small violation of the Constitution, or a large one, whether you think it doesn't affect you so you're not too worried about it or somebody else, if you just turn a blind eye to it, you encourage other people to do it again and more. Or as the late great Harry Browne once said, every power that you authorize government to use for something that you see as good, you're also authorizing a future government, a future politician to use the same power to do something you don't like, to do something bad. Also over on Facebook, I want to say hi to Theodore Lee, Eric Nance, good to see you, buddy. Mary Lee O'Neill, DJ Vaught, who asked, do you have a list of who in D.C. are 10th Amendment supporters? Well, I do. It's right here. Probably none. I mean, maybe there's one or two. I apologize to those who might want to make arguments for other politicians, but you don't get too far supporting the 10th Amendment in Washington, D.C. And also hi on YouTube to Jim Knowlton, Grant, and Timothy Martin, Michael Wendt on Facebook. I'm not going to be able to keep up with everybody, but I am very grateful for you guys being here. So let's get into this. So first of all, again, a reminder, the show on Friday I think is a good foundational show to watch. It's a short one, about 13 minutes, so please check that one out. But going forward, I want to cover this article that we published from Mike Meharry, who is on vacation this week, thankfully, because the man works way too hard for way too little money and has done it for a really, really long time. We couldn't do the work we do here without the incredible writing and reporting of Mike Meharry. And so this is our litmus test. This is one of our core principles, our litmus test on everything. And it's partly why when people ask me about some federal proposal or somebody saying or doing something, somebody tweeting something in Washington, D.C., I don't spend a lot of time on what happens in Washington, D.C., because I have a knee-jerk reaction that says everything that they do, say, or propose is an unconstitutional act. And if you view the Constitution like I do, as a set of limited delegated powers with the vast majority, like James Madison said in Federalist 45, the powers reserved to the states are numerous and indefinite. And when he said the states, this means the people of the several states. He clarified that in his famous report of 1800, which was a response to the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, following up on the Virginia resolutions that were passed in response that year, calling on states to use their duty to interpose. So I look at, if you, like me, look at the Constitution from the founders' view, then you recognize that almost everything that the Washington, D.C. has done in modern times is a total violation, a total disrespect, a total disregard for that original Constitution. But it's still important to understand this core principle. And Mike says, here's the first question you should ask about any proposal made by any person, excuse me, in the federal government. And the question is this authorized by the Constitution? Most people don't ask this question. In fact, we don't see this in a conversation. We don't see this in public debates. We don't see this in conversations from pundits, from articles and videos. Doesn't happen very often where they actually look at the constitutionality of something. We do hear it from opposition parties and groups and politicians when they want to use the Constitution as a bludgeoning tool against the other party or their political opponents. We hear that pretty regularly, but it's not consistently applied. So Bernie Sanders, for example, not to be too current events, but he may talk about a foreign policy action as being unconstitutional today. And then when the next president is in office, if it isn't Bernie, if it's someone on his team, he may not say the exact same thing. And I'm sorry to single out Bernie. Barack Obama is a great example. And so are every modern politician. But Obama back in 2007 was very specific when he said that the president doesn't have the authority to engage in war without congressional approval. This is the constitutional view. He was correct when he was running for office, probably because he or his advisors recognized that the public is war weary. They don't want to see more war. And so this was a great opposition to the Bush administration's policy where you had this unitary executive, the John Yoo view, where the executive branch gets to make this decision. But soon as Obama gets into office, he flips that on its head. Libya, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, elsewhere, it's all been just an executive decision. And when he went to Congress, even in regards to Syria, it's not because they were admitting that Congress had the authority. They were very clear saying that they didn't need to go to Congress, but they thought that it was politically a good idea to get the Congress involved, as if they had no other say otherwise. So is this authorized by the Constitution? Not do I like this policy, or as Mike writes, do I like the guy proposing the policy? Or is this policy a win for liberty? And many of our libertarian friends will look at it in that way. Like, I like what's happening now on this issue because it advances liberty. But if you only look at the short term instead of the long-term potential, what can they do with that power? Can the opposition party do totally opposite? Then it's a loss. And George Washington gave that warning. I want to just go back to that here from in his farewell address, if my internet speed is working. But he put it this way. Again, I mentioned this last week, Friday. He said, "Let there be no change by usurpation." Usurpation is a theft of power. He says, "For though this in one instance may be the instrument of good, it is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed." So even if you like the short-term results, even if you like the long-term result, if it is a change of government power or limits on government by usurpation, by arbitrary power, just being able to exercise it because it's popular, there's no resistance to it, then eventually, and it doesn't take very long, future politicians will do the same thing for something else, and I cannot repeat that enough. So you always have to start out with that first question. And Mike goes on, and he hammers on the left very rightly on this. He says the left abandoned this policy decades ago, if it ever embraced it at all. I've also seen, he writes, countless Republicans and conservatives turn their backs on constitutional fidelity as well, because the limits on federal power stand in the way of enacting policies they like, or simply because they want to defend their guy in the White House. When Bush was in office, anytime, and mind you, our organization started in 2006, and it was fun talking with Tom Woods last week. I think the episode aired was like 1431, so probably tomwoods.com/1431, I think, if I get my numbers right. But I was the episode, me and Michael Heiss from LPMC, we were talking, and Tom made the comment, which is absolutely true, where people will hammer on us when we talk about a constitutional position. They'll say, "Where were you when so-and-so was in power?" So anytime we oppose an act by the current administration, they'll say to us, or opponents will say, "Oh yeah, but where were you when Obama was in power?" And the response is, "Well, we were here doing the same thing." When Obama was in office, they would say, "Where were you when Bush was in power?" And, well, we were here doing the same thing. And I guess if someone asked the same thing, "Where were you when Clinton was in power?" I guess I would personally have to say I was a socialist and I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And now I finally learned the right thing, which is limiting government power all the time on every issue, no matter what, because they cannot be trusted. So Mike points out that, the right does the exact same thing. We got hammered on opposition to the Patriot Act, to the Real ID Act, to the war on marijuana, to undeclared wars under the Bush administration. Anytime we oppose the current administration, the Trump administration on anything, we get the same thing. They don't care about, a certain percentage of people do not care about the constitutional fidelity. They care about whether or not they like the team in charge, and that's very unfortunate. And he goes on. He says, this is all like a hole in a dam. Once water starts squirting through the hole, you'll never plug it. You've compromised the integrity of the dam. The hole eventually grows until the entire dam collapses. And he's talking about a great line from John Adams, who was writing to Abigail in 1775, where John said, a constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever. The short version is, once you allow government to take your liberty, it will never give it back voluntarily. And I totally agree. That's another reason why me personally, and here at the 10th Amendment Center, we don't focus our energy on electing the right candidate to Washington, D.C., whatever the level of office. We don't focus on the right bureaucrats or the right judges, because government isn't voluntarily returning the power to us, returning the liberty, returning their own limits to us. They will not do this. And we have to take other actions, which I'm going to follow up with on Wednesday's show as well, on how to deal with violations of the Constitution. And so Mike actually covers a number of the things that I pointed out in last Friday's episodes, talking about how when you turn a blind eye, it creates a real problem. But one that I think that was really interesting that I did not cover was Thomas Jefferson's 1791 opinion on the constitutionality of a national bank. And here he reiterates the 10th Amendment. I think it's worth it to read it, especially seeing our anniversary, 13 years is tomorrow. Let's at least cover it. He says, quote, I consider the foundation of the Constitution as laid on this ground, that all powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people. He skipped the word respectively, but that's okay. 10th Amendment in brackets. To take a single step, and this is the takeaway, to take a single step beyond the boundaries thus specifically drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power, no longer susceptible of any definition. So a single step. And as John Dickinson said, and I mentioned in last Friday's show, John Dickinson said in response to the Townsend Acts, oppose a disease at its beginning. Because once the disease starts growing, John Adams at one point called constitutional violations, usurpations, quote, like a cancer. Because once it starts growing, it's deadly. And Jefferson said a single step beyond the limits delegated to Congress is an unlimited power. Because once you've basically set the foundation, set the principle that they can do things, whatever it may be, good, bad, indifferent, small, big, whatever it may be, soon as they can take an action beyond those limits, there's no limit to what action somebody else in the future is going to do. And I would say history has proven Thomas Jefferson right once again. It's not even close. And Meharry puts it like this. A single step starts with neglecting that first question, which is it constitutional? And I think this is a really good, and again, I don't really want, because these are timeless principles, and I think the names of politicians, while they change, the principles remain. You're always going to find Team A versus Team B. Well, hopefully not always. We'd like to see that end, whether it's in our lifetime, my lifetime, or sometime in the future. We'd like to see it be far different than Team A versus Team B, unless Team A is pro-Constitution and Team B is to hell with it. So he says, pause for just a moment. Think of the worst politician you can imagine. And whether you're watching this today on June 24th, 2019, or you're watching it sometime in the future, if YouTube decides to stay around and doesn't ban us in the future, and you're watching us in June 24th, 2219, think of the worst politician you can imagine. Now, for today, Mike puts maybe it's AOC, maybe it's Bernie, maybe it's Hillary, maybe it's Elizabeth Warren, or if you were an Obama supporter, just consider Donald Trump, or vice versa. He says, now then, imagine them in possession of a boundless field of power. That's how Jefferson put it. That's where you're heading when you support the current president doing whatever he pleases because you like him. Never forget, there will always be a next guy. And this is the same warning, again, going back to Friday's episode. If you don't oppose a disease at its beginning, it's deadly. So looking back over in the live chat, man, there is some awesome back and forth going on here. I don't think I can keep up with it in total at all. Some Good comments like from Larry Clark saying most of them are liars because they take an oath to uphold it. So true. Ward Lawrence says, ask your state legislators these same questions. Yes, absolutely. This is part of the solution to the problem, part of it. And that I'll cover a little bit more on Wednesday's show as well. Hi to Pamela Rankin and Tom as well. And some interesting comments about Spooner. I should do a full episode about Lysander Spooner because Spooner did some great work on constitutional authority, especially when it came to the Fugitive Slave Act. And I think that's worthy to cover on a full show at some point. And hi to EHP Training. I'm very grateful for your support, buddy. Thanks for being here. So one other thing that I want to cover here in this show is, well, how does this play out when you ask this question? Is it constitutional? In current times, what most people tend to do is they look at the policy first. They actually ask the questions, whether they're consciously doing this or not. They're asking the questions that Mike Meharry started out saying, don't do this. They start asking, do I like this policy? Do I like the guy proposing the policy? Man, woman, beast. Doesn't matter. Do I like the being proposing this policy? Or is it a win for liberty? I think the first two tend to be the ones that most people ask at least subconsciously. Then what they do is they try to contort the Constitution to fit that. And they will find a single quote that says something from a single founder in a single letter in 1823 to validate their already held view, confirmation bias that the Constitution authorizes something. But the word constitutional doesn't mean the same thing as the word good. And the word unconstitutional doesn't mean the same thing as the word bad. Let me say that one more time because hopefully it makes sense. The word constitutional doesn't always mean the same as the word good, and the word unconstitutional doesn't always mean the same as the word bad. And maybe I should take out the word always. But just because the government is authorized to do something doesn't mean that it should. Think about that. Just because Congress has delegated the power to declare war, and let's say Congress were to reclaim that authority, and in the current situation, maybe declare war on Iran, would that be a good choice? I would disagree with it. I could certainly make the claim that, well, at least they're following the Constitution for the first time since 1943. That would be, in essence, a positive, but that doesn't mean the policy is good. And I have to think through a little bit deeper on the unconstitutional end because I think refraining from doing something, at least in the status quo, is always bad, or a violation of power, taking a single step beyond it does always qualify as bad. But I think people substitute good and bad for the word constitution too often. So if they like the policy, they assume that it's constitutional. They figure like, oh, well, I want this to happen, so it's got to be okay. We heard this in regards to Obamacare, all kinds of twisted arguments about how basically everything was interstate commerce. And of course, back in 2005, when Justice Scalia wrote the majority opinion for the Supreme Court saying that growing 6 plants in your backyard, never buying or selling them, never taking them across state lines. Of course, this is the cannabis plant. This counted as interstate commerce, and the federal government could use the Commerce Clause to ban, regulate, or prohibit it as they saw fit. A lot of people from the conservative side of the spectrum, a lot of Republicans, cheered the conservative icon Scalia for being constitutionalist. But this finds no basis in the Constitution. That is not interstate commerce. And of course, that comes back to bite conservatives in the ass because they use that same argument in the NFIB versus Sebelius case. This was the foundation of the argument in favor of Obamacare in court back in, 2012, 2010, something like that. So you don't turn a blind eye because that's dangerous. And people tend to try to twist arguments to fit policies they like instead of doing what James Madison did. Back in March 3rd, 1817, his last day in office, two consecutive administrations under James Madison, he vetoed what was known as the Bonus Bill of 1817. This is an article from Dave Benner that we ran in March of 2017, a couple of years ago, and it's an awesome piece that I think you should read over at the show notes in 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty. And this was a plan, Dave writes, that called for the federal construction of various roads, bridges, and canals throughout the country. This was an infrastructure spending bill, large spending bill to expand infrastructure. Dave calls Madison's writing on why he vetoed this. He sent a letter saying, I'm vetoing this. He thinks it's one of the most important things that Madison ever wrote. And he vetoed the bill, and this is what Dave says. Madison's reasoning was simple, although he personally favored the idea of infrastructure construction, writing that he was, quote, not aware of the great importance of such things. He denied the policy's constitutionality on a federal level. Last day in office, nothing to lose at all. And he was willing to veto something that he actually was in favor of. He specifically said, like, look, we just don't have the authority to do this. I'd like to see it be done. Now, I disagree with James Madison on the economic policy there. I've read too much Austrian economics. I've read too much Mises and Rothbard and a little bit of Hayek and some of these other things. And I recognize that government spending is a ripoff. But that's a different question. You can favor things. You can disagree economically and come to the same place. And again, Madison, he wasn't asking the question or answering the question of, do I like this policy first? Because if he just liked the policy, he would have signed it. Instead, he asked, is this authorized by the Constitution? And he said, this is from the so-called father of the Constitution. He says, no. He says, quote, the legislative powers vested in Congress are specified and enumerated in the 8th section of the first article of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. And he says, and it does not appear that the power proposed to be exercised by the bill is among the enumerated powers. What a kind way of putting it. According to Madison, Dave writes, using the Commerce Clause, General Welfare Clause, and Necessary and Proper Clause as justification for the law, quote, would be contrary to the established and consistent rules of interpretation as rendering the special and careful enumeration of powers which follow the clause nugatory and improper. That's Madison's words right there. Short version, even if you like a policy, if you do not find, ignore the fact of whether you like or dislike a policy first and look to the founders to see if that policy is authorized. And when it comes to infrastructure spending on a general level, Madison said no. Now, does that mean every piece of infrastructure spending from the federal government is a violation of the Constitution? Not necessarily. But the way that it's seen today, that the feds can actually spend to build whatever, Madison rejected that flatly, and he was willing to oppose this. This is backbone. This is answering the first question. Is it constitutional? Recognizing that if you authorize government to spend money on something that you like today, you're authorizing a future government, a future politician to spend money on things that you oppose later on. I cannot repeat that enough. I know you're probably between Friday's show and today and probably again Wednesday and Friday. You're going to hear me saying these same things over and over and over, but it's something that I think is the basis for what we do here at TAC. It is the basis for how we approach things. We want to oppose the disease at its beginning. We want to find out whether or not something is constitutional. Then we want to ask the next question, which is what I'm going to cover on Wednesday's show. What do we do about it? And I think those of you who followed our work for a long time, you probably have a pretty good idea of what we're supposed to be doing about it. I hope you guys are finding this really interesting and educational, fun to watch, and all that good stuff. I'm very grateful, again, that you're spending some time with me today. Theodore Lee, I appreciate the feedback on doing an episode on Spooner. EHP training. Publius Hulda is great on this subject. She actually wrote me about a week or so ago. It was good to hear from her. She does a lot of really, really good work on her blog as well. North Texas Patriot is correct. The Constitution and Bill of Rights is never considered today. It's only considered when used as a tool. So Obama, back to Obama, opposing the unilateral power of the executive branch to engage the country in war. He was only opposed to that while Bush was in office, while he was running for office. And as soon as he has the power in his hand, then he's not opposing it at all. And that is the playing out in reality of what Lord Acton says. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So as long as they have that power, the likelihood of them saying, nah, no thanks, I'm not going to use this, is very, very, very low. I think Ron Paul would have been tempted. And this is a guy who voted no on almost everything. Dr. No. Everyone is a human. Ward Lawrence is correct. Congress declaring war was designed to defend the U.S. against foreign aggression and not to be the aggressor. There is an argument to be made, Ward, as an aside, that unless it's a defensive act, that if it doesn't follow the rules of law, I'm not even saying it right. I shouldn't get into it, really. Basically, if it's still an offensive act, it would still be seen by some founders as being an unconstitutional declaration, but that is a very complex one. Tom Esper, thank you so much for the feedback. Love the work you do. Keep it up. Thank you. Absolutely couldn't do this without good people like you supporting the effort. So again, I hope you guys found this interesting. I'm very grateful for all of you watching, whether it's live or in the archive. Again, a reminder, tomorrow, June 25th, 2019 is our 13-year anniversary. I can hardly believe it. I spent the first, 5 years probably working a part-time job making $11 an hour just so I could afford $24 a week at the grocery store. I'm not living rich by any stretch of the imagination these days, but I definitely put my neck on the line, and so many of you have rallied to the cause, and I cannot say thank you enough. There was a time back in 2012, 2013 where I was at my wit's end. I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills, the hosting, having team members that can blog and spend time doing things. I was running out of money, and a lot of really, really good people came and kept us afloat. That set the foundation. We're still rocking strong. We've got a long, long way to go, and anything that you can do to help us spread the word means a lot. Please smash the like, subscribe, continue leaving comments, send some emails. Reviews at iTunes and Spotify are huge, and of course, if you want to support us financially, we make every single dollar go a long, long way. Memberships are available at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. If you don't want to sign up as a member, but you just want to kick in some money, 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate. Thank you again for being here. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope your Monday's off to a great start, and I'll see you on Wednesday here at Good Morning Liberty. Thanks again.